Breaking just days ago, the United States Supreme Court struck down over $175 billion in Trump tariffs in a stunning, historic 6-3 ruling, and Canada did not wait a single hour to respond. Prime Minister Mark Carney launched Canada's first-ever defense industrial strategy, officially designed to end Canadian dependency on the United States military supply chain. And for the first time in 70 years, NORAD, the Joint Defense Command that protects all of North America from missile attack, is now politically on the table. And what comes next will reshape this entire continent forever. Before we dive into this explosive story, and I promise you every single minute gets more serious, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell icon. This story is moving fast. New developments are happening almost daily, and you do not want to miss a single update. Okay, let's go. Let's step back for just 60 seconds, because the media is reporting these events separately, and nobody is connecting the dots. Here's the full picture. On February 1st, 2025, Donald Trump signed executive orders imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. The official reason cited was border security and fentanyl trafficking concerns. Canada's response was immediate. Then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced retaliatory tariffs on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of American products: steel, aluminum, autos, consumer goods. According to Reuters, this was the most significant rupture in United States and Canada trade relations in nearly a century. But here's what they are not telling you in the mainstream headlines. That was just round one. Over the following year, this conflict escalated through 12 months of economic warfare. Ontario Premier Doug Ford threatened and briefly implemented a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to 3 American states. According to economists cited by the Fulcrum, Canada's GDP already took an estimated 1.5 to 2% hit from the trade disruption. And the United States goods trade deficit, according to Yahoo Finance, it hit a record $1.24 trillion in 2025, meaning Trump's tariffs did not reduce the deficit at all. And now, in February 2026, everything just changed again dramatically. Smash that like button right now if you're already realizing this story is way bigger than the headlines suggest, because we are just getting warmed up. The most explosive details, the ones involving the Pentagon, NORAD, and a $175 billion legal time bomb, are coming up in just a few minutes. Stay with me. So, what finally broke the dam? What triggered the single most important week in United States and Canada relations in modern history? Let me walk you through it event by event, because the timing is almost impossible to believe. It starts on February 20th, 2026. The United States Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, ruled that the Trump administration had overstepped its legal authority by using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, known as IEEPA, to impose tariffs. Now, here is why this is enormous. IEEPA was the legal foundation for essentially all of Trump's major tariffs. Canada, Mexico, China, the European Union, all of it built on IEEPA authority. The court just said that was unconstitutional according to the Penn-Wharton budget model at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the most respected nonpartisan fiscal institutions in the country. Over $175 billion in tariff revenue is now legally subject to refund. That is $175 billion that businesses and importers could legally claw back from the United States Treasury. According to Reuters, the Trump administration scrambled within hours to replace those tariffs using different legal authorities, and Politico described the White House response as, direct quote, damage control. The weapon Trump built has been dismantled by the highest court in the land. He is now trying to build a new one in real time, and Canada knows it. Now here's where it gets strategically fascinating. While Washington was on fire managing the Supreme Court ruling, Canada had already moved. 3 days earlier, on February 17, 2026, Prime Minister Mark Carney launched Canada's first-ever defense industrial strategy. The stated goal: purchase 70% of Canada's military equipment from Canadian manufacturers. The explicit reason, stated publicly by Carney himself and reported by Politico, was, direct quote, to reduce Canada's dependency on the United States. Think about what that means. Canada, America's closest ally, the country that shares the longest undefended border in the world. The co-founder of NORAD is now officially building a defense policy designed to operate without American systems. And today, February 27, 2026, Prime Minister Carney is in India, according to Reuters, signing a 10-year, $2.8 billion Canadian dollar uranium supply deal, actively building alternative trade relationships while the United States is tied up in legal chaos. Canada is not panicking. Canada is pivoting. Right here, drop a comment below and answer this question. Is Canada's move justified given everything Trump did with tariffs, or has Carney gone too far? I genuinely read every single comment, and I want your take. Now let's keep going, because the evidence gets heavier from here. Let's go deeper on the Supreme Court ruling, because the financial consequences of this decision are staggering, and most outlets are underselling them. On February 20th, 2026, in the consolidated cases known as Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump, the Supreme Court issued its ruling. According to SCOTUS Blog's official case breakdown, the majority opinion stated, direct quote, IEEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs, full stop, no exceptions, no gray area. According to the European Parliament think tank, which published an immediate analysis, this ruling invalidates all tariffs that President Trump imposed under IEEPA on United States trading partners, including the April 2025 reciprocal tariffs. Now let's talk about the money. Penn Wharton's budget model projects that reversing these IEEPA tariffs will generate up to $175 billion in refunds to businesses and importers who paid duties over the past year. $175 billion. To put that in perspective, according to the Tax Foundation, the 2026 Trump tariffs amount to an average tax increase of $700 per American household. That is money coming out of regular Americans' pockets for tariffs that a 6-3 Supreme Court just declared were illegally imposed, according to CNBC. As of February 26th, the Department of Justice is already facing its first court deadline for processing tariff refund claims. The Trump administration has signaled it will use Section 232 national security tariffs and Section 301 trade authority to reimpose duties. But, and this is critical, according to trade experts at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, those pathways are slower, more legally constrained, and far more vulnerable to further court challenge. The weapon is dismantled. The new weapon is not ready, and Canada knows it. Now, here's where it gets even more serious, because while the tariff war was the headline story, the most dangerous weapon Canada deployed wasn't in trade documents. It was in your light switch. In March of 2025, Ontario Premier Doug Ford stood at a press conference and announced a 25% surcharge on all electricity exports to Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. 3 American states, directly powered in part by Canadian hydroelectric and nuclear energy, were suddenly facing an electricity price hike as a direct consequence of Trump's tariff policy. According to NPR's reporting from March 2025, this was a deliberate escalation designed to make American consumers, not just American businesses, feel the consequences of the trade war in their homes and their utility bills. According to a Columbia University energy policy analysis, Canada's energy leverage over the United States is one of the most underappreciated geopolitical asymmetries in North America. Canada exports electricity, natural gas, oil, and uranium to the United States at scale. The United States imports all 4 from Canada. According to Forbes, Ford ultimately moved forward with the electricity surcharge, explicitly calling it, direct quote, a direct response to Trump's tariff aggression. And now, as of February 2026, with Carney's new defense strategy in place and Canada actively diversifying its trade toward India, Europe, and other partners, the energy leverage question is no longer a threat. It is an established reality, and here is the absolute kicker. The thing that has senior defense officials on both sides of the border expressing serious documented concern, NORAD. For viewers who may not be familiar, NORAD stands for the North American Aerospace Defense Command. It is a 70-year-old joint United States and Canada military institution founded in 1958 that monitors every ballistic missile, aircraft, and aerospace threat to the entire North American continent, every Russian missile launch, every unidentified aircraft, every hypersonic threat. NORAD sees it all because it uses radar installations and monitoring systems that span both countries simultaneously. Now here is what Defense One, a highly respected defense policy publication, reported in April 2025. The United States commander of NORAD explicitly warned on record that if Canada reduces its participation in key defense agreements, the Pentagon would be, direct quote, partially blind to enemy missiles. Not metaphorically blind, literally blind, for a period that could last years while new infrastructure is built. The New York Times reported in January 2026 that the question of NORAD's future structure had become, quote, a genuine political issue between the two governments. Fast forward to February 2026, Canada's new defense industrial strategy explicitly redirects defense procurement away from American suppliers. According to CBC News, Canada is now reconsidering its F-35 fighter jet order. Canadian-built radar systems are being evaluated as alternatives to American Aegis systems, and according to CBC's reporting, the United States ambassador has already publicly warned that if Canada pulls back from the F-35 order, direct quote, NORAD's operational structure would need to change. Let me give you the simple version of what all of this means. A trade war that started over border politics and fentanyl, a drug that is, according to United States DEA data, primarily manufactured in China, not Canada, has now escalated to the point where the joint continental missile defense architecture that has protected North America since the Cold War is under active political stress. That is not dramatic language. That is the documented position of senior defense officials on the record on both sides of the border. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. This is the kind of deep-sourced, connected analysis that gets buried by algorithms because it doesn't fit a simple partisan story. I need your support to keep bringing you this level of research. Subscribe, tap the bell. Let's keep going. All right, we have laid out the facts, the evidence, the timeline. Now let's talk about how the key players are actually responding, because this is where it gets politically complex, starting with the Trump White House. The administration's immediate response to the Supreme Court ruling was, in the words of Politico, damage control. According to Reuters, Trump publicly vowed to continue the trade war using, quote, every other legal tool available. His trade representative, Jamieson Greer, confirmed in a direct interview with CBC as recently as February 26, 2026, that any deal with Canada, direct quote, will include tariffs. So even after a 6-3 Supreme Court defeat, the administration is not retreating. It is regrouping. According to the Globe and Mail, Trump's strategy now involves pursuing sector-based duties through Section 232 and Section 301 authorities, which require different legal justifications and significantly more time to implement. The rhetorical question that every trade analyst is now asking, and which the Peterson Institute addressed directly in their post-ruling analysis, is this: with what legal authority on what timeline, and with what congressional backing does the next tariff regime get built? None of those questions have clear answers today. Now let's talk about Prime Minister Mark Carney. Carney has positioned himself, according to multiple international analysts, as one of the most economically sophisticated adversaries the Trump administration has faced. Before becoming Prime Minister, Carney served as Governor of the Bank of Canada and then as Governor of the Bank of England, making him one of the few world leaders with direct, hands-on experience managing systemic economic crises at the highest level. His defense industrial strategy is not a panic response. According to the official government press release published on canadajc.ca, it is a structured, long-term strategic pivot with specific procurement targets, industrial investment goals, and sovereignty objectives. And today, February 27, 2026, while Washington is managing tariff refund lawsuits, Carney is in India, according to Reuters, signing a 10-year, $2.8 billion Canadian dollar uranium supply deal. According to Al Jazeera's reporting today, Carney's India visit is part of a broader pattern of Canada, building relationships with what he calls middle powers, countries that can provide trade, technology, and strategic partnerships independent of American dependency. This is long-term strategic architecture, not a short-term reaction. Now the Pentagon and defense establishment, defense officials have been notably and deliberately measured in their public statements, but the documented concern is real. According to Defense One's April 2025 reporting, the NORAD commander's warning about being partially blind to enemy missiles was made in an official capacity, not off the record. According to Politico, Canada's new defense industrial strategy has been formally noted at the Pentagon, with defense planners now required to model scenarios in which Canadian procurement shifts away from American systems. After Trump's threats against Canada, according to Politico's February 24th report, Canadian military recruitment has surged, with Canadians increasingly motivated to serve in a military that is asserting national independence. The defense relationship, which was once described by United States military officials as the most seamlessly integrated alliance in the world, is now being stress-tested in real time. On the congressional side, there is a growing, though still largely private, split between defense-focused legislators and trade hardliners. According to the Brookings Institution's analysis of the Supreme Court ruling, the decision, direct quote, strips the executive of the unilateral economic power it has relied on for years, and noted that Congress now needs to act if tariffs are to continue legally. But with the current congressional dynamics, bipartisan legislative action on trade is, according to multiple analysts at Oxford Economics and RBC's Top Risks 2026 report, unlikely in the short term, which creates a power vacuum in United States trade policy exactly at the moment when Canada, India, and European partners are moving fastest. Let me give you historical context now, because this situation is genuinely unprecedented, and I want you to understand exactly how unprecedented it is. Think back to 1988. President Ronald Reagan and Prime Minister Brian Mulroney signed the Canada-United States Free Trade Agreement, the direct predecessor to NAFTA and the current USMCA. That agreement was built on a philosophical foundation, not just an economic one, that Canada and the United States were not merely neighbors. They were a single integrated economic zone, deeply interdependent. by choice and by design. The two economies became so intertwined that, according to trade data, by 2024, Canada and the United States were each other's largest trading partners, with over $1 trillion in annual bilateral trade. Think back to September 12, 2001. In the hours after the September 11th attacks, when United States airspace was completely shut down, Canada opened its airspace immediately to diverted American planes. The small town of Gander, Newfoundland, population 10,000, received 38 diverted aircraft and 6,579 passengers overnight. Canadians took strangers into their homes, fed them, housed them for days. The two countries didn't just share a border. They shared a grief, a purpose, and an instinctive alliance. Think back to 1958, the founding of NORAD. The entire premise of the Joint Command was that neither country could defend the North American continent alone. Joint radar, shared intelligence, integrated command. For 67 years through the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Cold War, the post-9/11 era, that structure held without serious political stress. What is happening right now breaks all three of those historical patterns simultaneously. For the first time, Canada is officially building a defense supply chain that excludes American manufacturers by government policy. The legal architecture of United States Tariff Authority has been struck down by the United States' own Supreme Court, and NORAD's political foundation is being openly questioned by the country that co-founded it. According to Oxford Economics' Canada Key Themes 2026 report, the structural changes now underway in the Canadian economy are not temporary adjustments. They represent direct quote policy shifts prompting structural change, meaning the rewiring is permanent. There is no historical precedent for this specific combination. Not in 1930 during the Smoot-Hawley tariff disaster, not during the softwood lumber disputes of the 2000s, not in any chapter of the Canada-United States relationship since these two countries have existed side by side. This is new territory, and the decisions made in the next 6 to 18 months will determine the shape of North America for the next 50 years. Pause for just 1 second. Hit that like button if this breakdown is giving you context you haven't seen connected anywhere else. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this analysis to more people who need to understand what is actually happening. Thank you. Now let's talk about what this really means. For the Trump administration, the Supreme Court ruling is not just a legal setback. According to the Brookings Institution, it is a legitimacy challenge to the administration's core economic narrative. The presidency's signature economic claim was that tariffs would reduce the trade deficit, bring manufacturing back, and generate revenue. According to Yahoo Finance, the trade deficit hit a record $1.24 trillion in 2025. Manufacturing has not returned at scale, and now the $175 billion revenue stream is legally compromised. According to the Globe and Mail reporting, the political question every analyst is now debating is whether Trump doubles down with new tariff mechanisms or whether the Supreme Court defeat opens a window for negotiated trade agreements. His trade representative's statement that any Canada deal will include tariffs, reported by CBC, suggests the doubling down path. But with what legal authority and at what political cost remains the open question. On the legal side, the refund question is, in the words of CNBC, extraordinary. $175 billion in potential refunds, if processed as courts require, would represent one of the largest single fiscal events in recent United States history. According to Peterson Institute economists, the administration's replacement tariff tools are slower to deploy, harder to justify legally, and more politically constrained than IEEPA was. The legal landscape for aggressive unilateral trade action from this president or any future one has been permanently changed by this ruling. And the constitutional stakes go even deeper. According to Brookings, this ruling is part of a broader pattern of the Supreme Court reasserting limits on executive power, joining a body of recent case law that is systematically constraining what legal scholars call the imperial presidency model. For any future administration, Democrat or Republican, the legal toolkit for unilateral economic action has been dramatically narrowed. This is a structural constitutional shift, not just a one-case ruling for Canada. According to the Fulcrum's analysis, the damage from the trade war is already real and documented. GDP reduction of 1.5 to 2%. Thousands of layoffs in Ontario's auto and steel sectors reported by CBC. Consumer price increases across multiple categories, but here is the counterintuitive reality that Oxford Economics flagged. The Supreme Court ruling and Carney's defense strategy together may actually accelerate Canada's long-overdue economic diversification. Carney's India uranium deal today, European trade outreach, the Buy Canadian defense strategy, creating domestic industrial jobs. In the long run, according to Oxford Economics, this forced diversification could mark, direct quote, an inflection point for investment and growth in the Canadian economy. Short-term pain, potentially long-term structural strength. And every American ally is watching this situation closely. Japan, South Korea, Germany, Australia, if Canada, the closest, most trusted, most deeply integrated United States ally in the Western world, is building defense supply chains that exclude American manufacturers. Every other ally is now reassessing their own dependency calculations. According to Al Jazeera, Carney's deliberate outreach to what he calls middle powers signals a broader realignment in which traditional United States allies are hedging their bets, building alternative partnerships, precisely because they cannot predict the consistency of American trade policy. The implicit signal being sent to the entire Western alliance is this: if even Canada cannot rely on stable American trade commitments, nobody can assume they can. That is an extraordinary statement about American alliance credibility in 2026. Let me give you specific timelines now, because what happens next is going to move fast. In the next 30 to 90 days, according to the Globe and Mail, Trump will attempt to reimpose tariffs using Section 232 and Section 301 authorities. Expect new executive orders. Expect immediate legal challenges. Expect more court battles. According to Reuters, Canada is in private government conversations about USMCA, with its trade minister indicating those conversations are not discouraging, but firmly insisting Canada will not accept a deal that permanently embeds high tariffs. Meanwhile, according to CNBC, the Department of Justice faces escalating court deadlines on tariff refund processing. The fiscal pressure is real and immediate. In the medium term, 6 to 12 months out, according to CBC's NORAD reporting, Canada's F-35 decision will reach a critical decision point. If Canada confirms it is moving away from F-35 procurement, the Pentagon will be required to present Congress with an updated NORAD modernization plan that does not depend on full Canadian participation. According to Defense One, that plan does not currently exist in deployable form. The USMCA, which currently protects 85% of Canada-United States trade, is up for formal review in 2026. Whether that review proceeds as a genuine negotiation or collapses into continued dispute will define the economic relationship for the next decade. In the best-case scenario, according to RBC's Top Risks 2026 analysis, a negotiated USMCA renewal backed by bipartisan congressional pressure is possible, but unlikely given current dynamics. In this scenario, tariffs ease. NORAD is reaffirmed, Canada continues F-35 procurement, and both economies stabilize, a genuine win-win, if the politics allow it. In the worst-case scenario, continued tariff escalation through new mechanisms. USMCA review collapses. Canada fully commits to non-American defense systems. NORAD is structurally altered. The United States faces a continental defense gap and a $175 billion refund liability simultaneously. According to multiple economists and defense analysts, this scenario becomes more likely with every week that passes without a negotiated off-ramp. The stakes couldn't be higher, because we are not talking about abstract economics or partisan politics. We are talking about whether the defense architecture that has protected the North American continent from nuclear attack for 70 years survives a political and economic dispute that most analysts believe should never have reached this level of escalation. Watch for 3 specific developments in the next 60 days. First, the Department of Justice's response to court deadlines on tariff refund processing reported by CNBC. Second, Canada's formal position on the F-35 procurement contract reported by CBC. Third, whether the USMCA 2026 review session is formally initiated or strategically delayed, per Reuters and Globe and Mail reporting. Those 3 events will tell you everything about which scenario we are heading toward. Let me quickly recap the 4 key takeaways from today's breakdown. Number 1, the United States Supreme Court struck down over $175 billion in Trump tariffs on February 20th, 2026, in a historic 6-3 ruling, citing unconstitutional overreach of executive power, according to SCOTUS blog and Penn Wharton budget model. Number 2, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney launched a defense industrial strategy specifically designed to reduce Canadian dependency on American military systems, putting NORAD's operational structure under documented political stress for the first time in 70 years, according to Politico, Defense One, and CBC. Number 3, Canada deployed energy as a strategic weapon. Ontario's 25% electricity surcharge on 3 United States states exposed a critical American dependency that most of the public did not know existed, according to CNN, NPR, and Forbes. Number 4, the combination of legal defeat, defense decoupling, energy leverage, and trade diversification represents a genuinely unprecedented rupture, with no historical parallel in the most important bilateral relationship in the Western Hemisphere. This story is absolutely not over. The next 60 days are going to be critical, and new developments are happening almost daily. Subscribe right now, tap that bell icon so you do not miss the next development, and comment below. I want to know your answer to this question. Is the Canada-United States relationship recoverable under current leadership, Or are we watching the permanent restructuring of North American geopolitics in real time? Let's have that conversation below. Until next time, stay informed, stay analytical, stay vigilant.